Hello, I'm Emma Radmore and I'm a legal director and the practice development lawyer at Womble Bond Dickinson in our financial institutions sector. I've been advising clients now for about 30 years on various aspects of regulation. And one element of financial regulation that can really catch people out is the extent to which activities related to the offering of shares and other securities in private companies can get caught by the regulatory restrictions. So in this webinar, I'm going to talk about the key UK regulatory considerations that need to be taken into account when securities are being offered either to or from the UK outside of a listing scenario. I'm going to be focusing on relatively small issues of private company shares. What this means is that there are some topics that I'm not covering, but which are relevant more generally to the issue and offer of securities in certain contexts. And I'll just highlight these as appropriate when I'm going through. Also, just to say that what we're talking about here is primarily investment in commercial trading companies. If the company in question is set up as, say, an investment company or a fund, then again, there are different and more restrictive requirements that will apply. So, having set all those disclaimers, there are 5 things that we are going to look at today. We'll start off with company law, looking at the restrictions that the Companies Act places on making offers of securities in private companies to the public. We'll then move on to the Financial Services and Markets Act 2000, which we call FSMA, which is where the rest of the key regulatory restrictions and requirements will be found. First, we'll look at what FSMA defines as an offer to the public, which would need a formally approved prospectus. And mostly companies will be wanting to avoid this, so we'll be looking at how they can do that. Then we'll move on to look at the major regulatory restrictions in FSMA. And these are firstly the restriction on financial promotion, and secondly, the restriction on regulated activities. I'm going to look at what these are, who they affect, and what their impact is. We'll spend most of the time in this session on these 2 restrictions. We'll be looking at the territorial impact of the UK laws, and we'll see how they apply depending on who is in the UK and who is outside the UK and what is being done in the UK. And we're going to look at the most commonly used exemptions that can make compliance with what really are pretty complex restrictions a lot easier. And then finally, we'll talk briefly about the offence of making misleading statements. So before I move on, let me just stress that what we're talking about today is the offering of securities, and this includes shares